But thanks for.
Hi everyone and welcome. Today is a very exciting day here at Verified First because we are joined by HiBob and Donut to discuss the new workplace, what employees should expect in 2022. Due to the worldwide Amazon Web Services outage, you may be experiencing technical issues. This webinar is being recorded, so don't worry about missing out. You'll be able to access this event at a later time when connectivity is restored. We'd like for you to utilize the chat function during this event if you have any questions for our speakers. To prepare, let's practice now. In the chat feature, let us know where you're tuning in from and what is your favorite holiday dessert. Great. Verified First is located in Boise, Idaho, and my personal favorite holiday dessert is gingerbread cookies. Now, I'd like to kick us off by officially welcoming everybody to today's discussion. Please send a friendly hello and a warm welcome to our host, Ben Cornett, and Verified First VP of Business Development, Ian Bellet, Donut's Employee Experience Manager, Courtney Stratton, and HiBob's People and Culture Director, Annie Rosencrans. Without further ado, take it away, Ben.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Welcome to another webinar with Verified First, HiBob and Donut. And I just want to first shout out to everyone. Thanks for joining and thanks for tuning in for today. We're going to see people continue to register, but I think we're going to go ahead and get going. So I want to take a moment and introduce our panel for today. It is a panel discussion on the new workplace, what employees should expect in 2022. Right around the corner, and believe it or not, this year went by way fast. But let's start off by introducing Ian Bellet. He's the VP of Business Development, Verified First. Ian, you want to say hello and maybe tell everyone a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do at Verified First.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, so my name is Ian Bellet. I'm the VP of Business Development, which means for Verified First, I oversee the partner, or I should say I lead the partner management teams, marketing and sales teams. Something that's interesting about me, I think that's kind of relevant to our discussion, is I was also the chair of the Work at Home conference in 2011, and I used to specialize in work at home, which is kind of ironic because that's, 9 years going forward now. It's much more prevalent now than it was in 2011. So I'm looking forward to talking about that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ian. And next we have Annie Rosencrans. Thank you for joining us this morning, Annie, or afternoon or evening. I guess people could be from all over the world. And you want to tell us a little bit about your role at HiBob and kind of a little bit about you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm tuning in from New York, so afternoon here. As Ben mentioned, I'm the new Director of People and Culture here in the US for HiBob. I joined about a month and a half ago, so still fairly new and getting a handle on all that I will be responsible for. But HiBob is a global company based in Israel. So my main priority is really getting our US operation off the ground from an HR perspective, building programs and processes that make sense for the local market while being while honoring sort of the global culture that's been built to date.
Awesome. Well, Annie, we're excited to listen and hear from your expertise and experience. And finally, but not least, of course, Courtney Stratton from Donut. Welcome, Courtney. And you want to take a moment and tell everyone about you, about what you do for Donut, and maybe take a moment and talk a little bit about what Donut does, and then we'll kick it back to Annie to talk about what HiBob does quickly, and back to Ian to wrap it up about what Verified First does.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. So I'm Courtney, and you'll see my title says Customer and Employee Experience. I have been at Donut for about 3 years. We're a pretty small team, and in terms of what Donut does, we are a team connection building tool that's an app built for Slack. And so our goal is to connect people at work to get to know people that maybe they don't work with really closely, or to get to know the people they do work with closely on a little bit of a deeper level. So there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. So I actually started at Donut in customer experience and got to work with lots of HR professionals and people ops professionals, and just loved what they did so much that eventually I've been now able to move over into employee experience at Donut, and starting in 2022, I'll be doing it full time. So really excited to be joining the crew and able to talk with professionals in this space. So thanks, Ben.
Cool. Annie, do you want to tell us what HiBob does maybe?
Sure. Yeah. So HiBob is an HR tech platform. It's for those of you on the line who are in the HR space, it's an HRIS single source of truth for companies that want an easy, intuitive way to manage their employees, run performance reviews, run surveys. But what's unique about it is, one, it was built for global companies. So it's really customizable and flexible to the diverse needs of global companies. And two, it was designed with the employee in mind. So it's really, really intuitive, really user-friendly, and it's a platform that employees actually enjoy using. It's not just designed for the HR professional.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Obviously, we appreciate the partnership with HiBob. And Ian, you can talk a little bit about Verified First High Level, what we do, what we offer, and our partnership with HiBob.
Yeah, sure. So we are an HR technology company. We focus on background screening, drug screening, verifications. We also have an I-9 solution that we've integrated into our platform. And going forward, we plan on bringing out a few other HR-focused solutions that we're going to integrate into the platform. But we have today, like, I think what really makes our company tick is our partnerships, like with HiBob. And, you know, we have over 100 partners today. And we really enjoy the relationships we have with them.
Yeah, awesome. Well, before we get going, we're going to transition a little bit and talk a little bit about top priorities and hot trends for 2022. Just reminding our audience, you know, take a moment, use the chat. This is a good opportunity to ask any question you have. We'll try to address during the conversation as many questions in real time as we can, rather than just wait for the end. So take the opportunity and ask our question. We have about 230 of you on the line. I know we're not going to get all to the questions, but anyway, maybe I start off with a question. Annie, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Kind of, you know, the first question of the day is, you know, we got 2021 coming to the end. You know, Christmas, Hanukkah, all those holidays are around the corner. What would you say was the outstanding HR trend for this year, you know, before we look into next year? What was the number one thing that stood out the most, in your opinion?
I think for anyone who's done recruiting in the last year, probably the number one thing that you all felt, or that I've felt, is that it's really become a candidate's market. And whereas probably in past years, the candidate had to sell themselves, and they were, you know, probably applying to multiple jobs and getting one offer, if that. These days, employers really have to fight over the candidates and have to sell them. And that means we've had to have a really well-rounded approach to what our value proposition is as an employer. So that goes way beyond salary. While money is a big factor these days as well, because of the nature of the talent market. But the other things to consider that employers should really be focusing on are making sure they have well-rounded benefits programs, that they have a really amazing culture that's being branded and advertised well by their employees and marketed on LinkedIn and all those other online tools that employees are looking at, or candidates are looking at, before they apply to a job. So it's really, I think, that flipped the script on its head about how people are thinking about recruiting and attracting and retaining talent. And that theme sort of extends beyond the hiring point of view. It's also how are we keeping employees interested and engaged in what they're doing and wanting to stay at the company they're at, especially in this highly remote atmosphere where we don't have the benefit of being all together and engaging with one another face to face. That creates a whole other level and layer of complication in building that engagement and connection to your workplace.
Sure, and I want to maybe turn to Courtney. Any comment? I mean, obviously the tail of that and there, Annie, is how do we build that engagement, right? That's kind of what you guys specialize, I think, at Donut. You know, Courtney, any additional you know, other HR trends that you might have saw that came in 2021 that's kind of a trend of the year in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that Annie mentioned, while money is a big part of attracting talent and retaining right now, it's not the only thing that people are looking for. And, specifically mentioning your company culture, that can be a huge hiring advantage, but you have to kind of figure out what are those pieces that set you apart because, I think companies can say some of the buzzwords, but like, how are you actually embodying the things that you're saying that you think the talent wants. So one of the big ones I've seen is people saying, if they started a job remotely since COVID happened, they say, I don't really feel like a sense of belonging at my company, or feeling like they really know people beyond maybe just their manager and one or two people that they work really closely with on projects. So that's definitely something that we focus on a lot at Donut, but something that I've seen a lot of HR professionals talking about is like, okay, how do I make an environment where people actually feel like they can be getting to know others on the team, even if they don't work really closely with them and they're feeling isolated. So I think that's something that people are going to have to kind of rein in and think about as they're planning for 2022 and beyond. Whatever your work setup is going to be, whether that's going to be in an office, remote, hybrid, is how do you create those avenues for people to start building a sense of being bought in to the work that they're doing in the company as a whole.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I got to ask the same question to Ian because, I just have to ask Ian. But any other trends? I know Annie and Courtney kind of took the idea of, it's a different recruiter's experience and employee experience. Anything to add, Ian?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, I think remote is here to stay, right? It's not going anywhere. That's absolutely a requirement. I think for a lot of people that are looking for new opportunities right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great thing. Like I've always liked remote or work at home solutions as a way of creating greater productivity and in some ways, for the right kind of person, a happier employee. I think the cultural fit thing is interesting. I think that employees are looking for a cultural fit right in the middle of companies redefining their culture. And it's because of remote work. Like you can't do the things that you used to do when everyone was on site, and trying to figure out, okay, what is my culture now in the middle of all this while you're trying to hire, I think is a bit tricky. And I think at some point there'll be that balance and companies will figure it out, but I feel like that journey's still going on. I think that the desire for a work-life balance is stronger than I've ever seen it. I mean, it used to be, so I'm a little older, right? And back in my day when I was younger, people would talk about that, but I always felt like it was more of a catchphrase than a reality. I think today it's a reality. I think the newer generation of employees are very clear about what that work-life balance looks like, and they bring it up, and they want their employer to meet those requirements. So all that is really interesting. And the last thing I think is sort of like this pay equity idea, where as more and more workers become remote, this idea that you're going to pay what people are making locally, like say in Boise, Idaho, versus looking at it from a more national perspective, I think it's going towards looking at the national perspective. And that's another thing I think companies are learning how to do.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting perspective, and I like that Ian mentioned, working from home is something that he values, and of course he's in the office today, but I know you've got some construction going on at your home. He's remodeling his home.
Yeah, I'd rather be at home.
Yeah. So maybe we start with Ian, as we look into 2022, you said that remote work's here to stay. It's kind of that candidates market is what we heard. Adopting the different ways to recruit people, and we're more competitive against those candidates, are some things we heard. Is there anything in 2022, if you had a magic crystal ball, you would say this is a thing HR and talent acquisition leaders need to kind of hold on to or grasp a little bit more firm?
Well, so remote work is tricky. You know, it's a nuanced thing, and how you engage with employees, how you hire employees, all that has to change to fit, I think, a true remote work plan.
Mm-hmm.
And even the technology needs to change. Now, it's a lot easier today than it was 10 years ago from a technology perspective. I think the technologies that we all have available today are better, more stable. A lot of homes now have a gig of bandwidth going to the house. Back when I was really focused on this stuff, we used to have to bring an Ethernet cable, cables into the house to provide the kind of stability that you needed. And that's voice quality, video quality, all those things. So I think it's become easier to do remote work. And how you manage those employees is essential. Like, it's a totally different ballgame than managing on site.
Any thoughts, Courtney? I mean, that's probably where you guys, again, step in a little bit, is, making this experience, if you will, that you talk about. Any thoughts of, in 2022, if crystal balls, like, hey, employers, pay attention, this is going to be super important for you?
Yeah, a couple things that come to mind, to Ian's point about it being so much harder to, or maybe not harder, but so much different to manage a team when you've got people working remotely and potentially, again, hybrid setups as well. I think I've been thinking a lot about transparency as well as finding that balance. I think we're kind of all talking about this, we're not using these exact words, but like finding the balance between being reactive and proactive to what is going on in the world with these trends, because I think something we've seen is that we can't be proactive about everything. We can't predict everything that's going to happen. I know lots of professionals who thought their teams were going to be totally back in the office this year, and they haven't even set foot back in an office. So I think arming managers with the tools to sort of build the confidence and skills to connect with their teams, get to know them as people, find out what does work-life balance look like for them, since Ian mentioned that, because I think that's different for different people. And so I think being really intentional, and that's where that proactive piece comes in. Know that you're going to have to be transparent when you don't know what the next what is the next 6 months going to look like, and being transparent with that about employees, because so much is out of our control. I'm not even going to say their control. So much is out of our control in the world right now in terms of what is happening. And so the more information that I think you can provide for them in terms of being transparent with your communications, and then, again, proactively figuring out how do we make space for people to build those connections. And that might be, empowering your teams to do virtual socials. Maybe, there are better ways that you can do them if you've been doing them. If you haven't been doing them and people are feeling tired, they're feeling isolated, maybe there are, some ideas floating around out there that you can source from your own team around what would make them really excited about, work this month or next month. And that's something that I've seen teams doing more and more is, okay, we've done a virtual happy hour 5 times. Like, what else can we do now to help people actually build that sense of camaraderie with their teammates?
Yeah, we're doing a Christmas party in our teams with Quiplash, I think. So we've not done that yet, or, we'll see how it works.
Yeah, it's fun.
It'll be great. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I think it will be. So a question came in from our audience, and Annie, I'm going to kind of pick on you a little bit for the question. I think it's, it's around benefits. What unique employee benefit? This is from Alan, and Alan, thank you for your question, by the way. Keep them coming. So what unique employee benefit do you see being offered in 2022? That crystal ball.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one specific benefit. I think it will really vary by the makeup of your employees and your staff. But there are a ton of really unique benefits being offered these days. If you have a younger staff, that's a lot of, recent college grads, 401k match may not be as appealing to them, but perhaps contributing to loan reimbursement is a really interesting benefit that a lot of employers are now, looking at. There's For people with heavy millennial staff representation, it may be helping with fertility benefits or egg freezing. There are a lot of different directions you can go in, but I think the first thing before you select what it is that matters to your people, you need to survey them and ask them what they care about. And those are the kinds of things that, one, are going to attract people, depending on what kind of people you're looking for and what you need, what talent you need. Understanding the makeup of your audience and what they're looking for will help attract that talent, and ultimately will hopefully help retain them as well.
Yeah, it's good thoughts, really knowing your employees and where they're at and what they need, right? I mean, that's really what that boils down to. So, I kind of like, we had another question. Thanks, Alan, for your question. Todd brought a question to us, and maybe this one I'll go to Courtney. And, it comes to company culture, and Todd, thanks for your question. How is COVID impacting? It kind of relates to our conversation today. How has COVID impacted company culture? And I know that's a really big question, so maybe we boil it down to the three things that maybe COVID is impacted the most.
Yeah, I think I want to start by bringing something up that Ian said earlier, which is that things are in flux. So we're trying to attract talent, retain talent, and also trying to define what does our culture look like now that, X% of our company maybe works in different locations than they used to. So, I mean, I think location geography, being able to actually hire talent where they are is, of course, one everyone's been talking about. That's a much bigger thing now. I would also say being more intentional about culture is more necessary now probably than it's ever been before. Before people were in the office together, they had maybe that chemistry of just running into each other and saying, hey, do you want to do XYZ? Because I know that you really like whatever the thing is. Maybe two of them both really bond over an activity and they can invite other people in. Well, now that's a lot harder to do, to just bump into someone and find out that you both really love, I don't know, board games. So I think you have to be a lot more intentional about culture than you used to have to be. And so that goes back to Annie's point about finding out what people want, not just in benefits, but in culture, because I think it's easy to prescribe something and say, we're all going to do a game night because I like games, but maybe like the majority of your team doesn't like games. So maybe there's something that you can offer them that would be, much more attractive to them and make them feel engaged. And then I think thirdly would just be, again, that communication piece of, I think when we're working in such a distributed fashion, it's very easy to just, sort of charge forward with the projects and it's work, 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 and we're feeling super productive. But we've all seen this year that leads to burnout. So opening those lines of communication with people has been super critical, because people have to feel a little bit of psychological safety to be able to raise their hand and say, I have too much on my plate. What can we do to move it around? And, so bringing up again, that work-life balance, people do want it. And we have to, give them spaces to be able to actually say when they don't have it, so that we can help them figure out how to achieve that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Any additional thoughts, Ian, on how COVID has changed HR practices?
Well, I think COVID's here to stay, right? We just had another variant come out. I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, but my guess is that, probably we're going to see more variants after that. And I think every business at this point is saying, okay, remote is the thing. We're going to keep doing it. There's a couple things about culture when it comes to remote work. One is you've got to recognize not all employees feel comfortable in remote work. So from a cultural standpoint, you have to set the expectations with them up front. Like, here's what you should expect in remote work. This is what it's like. The tough thing about remote work is you can't replace that in-presence, face-to-face feel that Ben, we used to have. And our culture was is still, but when we were all here on site, it was a very fun culture. Constantly celebrating things, constantly having fun with one another. It's a bit difficult to redesign that for remote completely, and we're still learning how to do that. Um, I, uh, I just think that the employee fit is probably one of the things companies aren't thinking about a lot. It's shifted so much now where it's like, okay, everyone wants to work remote, so that's maybe the assumption. I wouldn't assume that, and we definitely found that certain people with certain characteristics are much better at remote. You know, they need to have a sense of autonomy. They need to have a sense of power to make decisions. They can't just, you just can't run to your boss every time something happens. You've got to be able to make those decisions on your own. Which I think is a good thing. I think that makes a better employee as employees get used to doing that more and more. But companies have to help the employees get there. So that's beyond the fun thing. That's training employees how to work remotely effectively.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Sorry, Annie, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to echo Ian's point. I also think there's going to be a lot more of a focus probably in the coming year on arming managers with the skills to be able to manage remote staff more effectively. I think we probably thrown them into the deep end over the last year and a half, 2 years, and just assumed everyone knows how to do it, when in reality most people are making it up. So HR teams will hopefully be investing more time into coaching or teaching managers on how to manage remote staff, how to coach, how to ensure accountability without micromanaging remotely. That's just not feasible. So I think there's going to be probably a bigger focus on L&D coming year.
Great chat, and I love the questions coming in, and they keep coming in. And Todd asked another question. I think we've already answered this. Do we see remote work being recalled as a pandemic decreases? And I think the answer is probably no from all of you. It's probably going to continue. Remote's still going to be a thing. Annie's kind of like this.
Remote will continue to be a thing, no doubt. I do think more companies will probably find some sort of hybrid solution. That's certainly happening at HiBob. I think I, for one, depend on that human connection for my day-to-day. I would lose my mind if I were home 5 days a week. And I don't think I'm alone in that. So I think employers will have to think about how they manage employees in both settings, both remote and in office.
Yeah.
I would say that something to remember about remote is you still need those on-site hoteling solutions where either an employee can check out at desk and come into work because something's going on at home. And that could be technology, that could be personal, it could be like me, and I've got people running around my house with hammers and saws. You've got to make sure you provide those options, ideally even when those employees aren't in the same the same place as your company headquarters, for example. It's good to have those options where they can go to somewhere and work someplace else. I think that not only is that critical, I think that the change of scenery sometimes helps employees be more productive and kind of give themselves a mental break from their home.
Yeah, I agree. So I think just everyone noticed Courtney did mention note there's a connection issue. Again, there's a known AWS worldwide outage. Hopefully she'll be joining us back real quick. So great questions, everyone. Todd, thanks for your question. Charlene has another question, and I think this is a really good question. We've talked a lot about remote. This one's not so remote. So Charlene, good question. Do you have any suggestions? Maybe Annie, you can kick this off, for recruiting healthcare workers. They're not remote employees. They've had difficulties. They've been dealing with COVID. They've been, morale's impacted, shortage of staff. It's long hours. It's mandatory vaccinate. I mean, the list goes on, right? Any ideas and tips that we can maybe help Charlene out with that, have seen or experienced?
I cannot speak specifically to the healthcare industry. I have never worked in the healthcare industry, but what I can speak to is the value of employer branding, and partnering with, I don't know if you have a marketing department, but partnering with marketing to make sure that presence out in the talent marketplace so that viable candidates will see your brand and know that you're an employer that cares about well-being and cares about work-life balance and will, it's not a place where you will get burnt out, or at least that should be what your brand should be portraying, and hopefully it's a reality. But I think employer branding is a huge piece of the puzzle of attracting talent, no matter what industry you're in.
Sure. Any thoughts, Ian, to help Charlene, the idea of, suggestions for recruiting healthcare workers in the market the way it is today?
Yeah, I feel kind of massively unqualified to answer the question, but I mean, I did read an article recently about a lot of nurses, for example, are choosing to be traveling nurses because of COVID, and the need for them to actually be able to move around, which is almost in a weird way kind of like this semi-remote thing going on with nurses, except they're going from place to place. And they're getting paid substantially more. So I don't know if that's a challenge for hospitals because that's occurring. All I can think of is, like, you got to find a way to give them a break. I really feel for all those folks out there that are working in hospitals, and I just can only imagine what it's like right now when we have these new COVID variants come out and the way it impacts their work environment, and the beds available and what they can and cannot do. I don't have any magic answers though.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunately there's not a magic bullet, and I think Annie, Diana's on your team, right? So I remember Diana talking about, thinking about recruiting healthcare workers, thinking about partnering with universities and colleges, recruiting through those avenues are close to those that are graduating. So maybe something to help Charlene. I know Courtney's back, so hey, Courtney, welcome back. I know you've been listening to the conversation and you were able to hear the audio. Any experience with healthcare? Any tips on, recruiting for these non-remote employees that are going through like tremendous? They're like the warriors of the war, right? They're the front lines. Any tips that we can help Chelsea out?
Well, I don't have any specific experience with healthcare workers, but I will say I have lots of friends who work in the healthcare field. And I definitely have seen what Ian was talking about, where a lot of my friends who are nurses are traveling nurses, and it is for the reasons we've discussed, which is that they like that flexibility and kind of being able to select, like, where am I going to go next? And it gives them a little bit more of a sense of ownership and control over their situation. And so I would definitely echo what Annie said, which is just if there is any piece of your employer branding that you can really highlight, and certainly make sure it's authentic, so maybe find out from the people who are working for you right now, what are the things that they do like, what is working for them. And I know I talked about this in a different context, but I think this is true no matter the industry, is find out, even though things are really hard, what are the things, and it might be really small things, but what are the things that they like, that you can highlight so that that feels authentic? Because the last thing you want is for someone to start and come in their first few weeks and be like, this isn't, what was advertised to me. So I think, be honest about, what is the workload and what can we do, as Ian said, to give them a break, or what are the little moments of surprise and delight and joy that they actually do find in their work environment right now, and how can we use those to our advantage as we're marketing this job to potential new recruits.
Yeah,
something I've done a lot, which maybe no one will like. I actually go through a stage where I kind of try to talk them out of the job, and I get to describe, okay, here's what this job is like. Here's all the good things, but here's the bad things. And then I kind of hold my breath to see if they're still interested. And most of the time they are, but I feel like we're being honest when we do that. And it helps set the expectations for them as they come in. But so maybe that's something really important you've got to do with healthcare workers.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I love our audiences because they always offer each other tips. And Jody had a tip maybe that can help Charlene, I think it was. For healthcare recruiting, offer referral bonuses, send out an email to employees every week, remind them that there's opportunities, encouraging them to send referrals. Also, sign-on bonuses have been helpful from what Jody's seen. So Jody, thanks for asking our peer question. That's what I love about the space is, you guys are superheroes. You come together and, we've been able to adapt and overcome over the last 2 years. And, everyone in HR and talent acquisition recruiters all alike are just, they're my heroes. So I love it. Well, let's transition. You know, we need to talk a little bit about what's next. You know, we're coming upon about midway point of our chat today. Thinking about, you know, we talk about employee experience quite a bit. You know, how would you describe ways employees experienced work in 2021? And maybe we start with Annie. I haven't heard from Annie for a while. What do you think? How did your team experience work?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm fairly new to HiBob, but I can speak to my previous employer. I mean, I think 2020 and 2021 combined were challenging years for so many reasons. And I think beyond just what we were doing in our day-to-day work, the elements of the external world inherently creeped into our day-to-day. And that probably affected a lot of people's ability to do their work the way they normally would have, where they can shut out the outside world. It was a little bit harder, especially for those who are sitting in their living room or may have had a spouse or children running around them while they were trying to get the job done. So I think all of those factors really intermingled the connection between work and life in a way that we've probably never felt before. And because of that, we lost Courtney. Because of that, companies had, HR departments, leaders really had to spend a lot more time thinking about how they're supporting employees, both professionally and personally, so that they can continue to do their best work for their company.
Yeah, it's good thoughts. You know, as we think about that, kind of personally, my experience, I got to know my team better, right? I got to know the people better because I saw them in their element. You know, I saw them with their kids, with their dogs, with their pets, and we learned that everyone on my team has a dog. It was really interesting. So it was kind of cool to be able to experience that. I know their dogs' names and I know what they're going through, and we've met up at the dog park as a team, and you know, it's really interesting that some of those, you know, that's how I experienced work, right? Courtney, maybe, you know, your experience, how are people in, you know, over at Donut, how are they experiencing work in 2021?
Yeah, I think similar to what you said, Ben, where our view of each other has gotten a lot more holistic. It's no longer, you know, just so and so who sits at the desk next to me. And so I've gotten to know a lot of my coworkers in a different way, and like know things about even the area that they live in, their neighborhood. We've done things like walk and talks where, you know, we're tired of being on Zoom all day, so maybe let's like actually either hop on a phone call or even just take the video call while we walk around our neighborhood. So we've done some activities like that to kind of get to know each other a little bit more outside of the, you know, Zoom square that we see for almost 8 hours a day sometimes. And other things I would say is I just think with you know, 2020 being like so, okay, we're in crisis mode. We have to just, you know, figure out what to do next. And then 2021 being a little more where, okay, we're getting the hang of this and we think we know what to expect. But then, you know, as Ian said, a new variant pops up. You know, there's something that gets kind of thrown into the mix that we weren't expecting. You know, there's certainly been that sense of just feeling tired, you know, working long hours on a Zoom or a go-to meeting is, you know, it can be very exhausting looking at a camera all day. So we've tried to incorporate, you know, ways to make that flexible and fit what different people need. So whether that's some meetings where you know, don't have to have cameras on, or you know, some opportunities to work asynchronously and do things on a different platform. So I think remote work has and 2021 has just sort of introduced I like to say good chaos, or kind of good messiness, because it's allowing people to come to the table much more authentically and say, this is what I need, you know, this particular format we're doing isn't quite working for me, so can we try something a little bit different? And it's harder because you know, from a people experience perspective, we have to be a lot more flexible in offering different options for them and figuring out what does that look like if it's not something that we normally do. But it has created a lot more of sort of an interesting challenge to meet people where they are, and again, recognize that they are whole people outside of, just their job.
Yeah, I love the idea of the walk and talk. Like that's one thing that's just jumped out at me. It's like, oh, we can do a walk and talk tour of the neighborhood of Christmas lights, and I've got team members all over the country, and that's really fun. So maybe someone adopts that. I know I probably will steal that. So
that's a great idea.
Yeah,
let's do it.
There you go. So Danielle had a question, and kind of related to what we're talking about. So sometimes organizations, in her organization, is in banking or something that's more regulated. So I guess the question, maybe I start off with Ian, just for fun. Traditional regulated industries like banking, they're reluctant to think about a hybrid work model and they want to get back to the traditional full in office. Any recommendations, suggestions that can help out, Danielle?
Well, are we talking trying to stay remote, but meeting those regulations?
Yeah, or maybe a hybrid that meets the regulations as well.
So you always need a hybrid solution. Like I said before, you always need an option for employees to go into an office somewhere. But let me just take a step back. Like, because COVID occurred, we all rushed to send people home. And what that now, I like the fact that people are working at home. What I don't like is I don't think companies necessarily took the time to figure out how to do it completely right. So one of those things that you're supposed to do with work at home employees is you need to talk to them about the space they work in. So it goes to like the kids running around or the spouse being in the house, which is not a bad thing. I don't want anyone to get, I'm all for spouses. But really you need that private space. And that's step number one. Privacy helps alleviate some of those regulations, right? It means that you're in a private room where no one's going to be looking over your shoulder. The door's closed when you're at work, and there's an understanding that while you're at work, no one should come in and out of that room. So now that can be, depending on what the company does, those roles can be really strict to a little less strict, but it's really important from a productivity point of view that companies look at how do we provide those kind of spaces. Like I'll say for me, my wife, Allison, she works at Boise State University, and she stole our office. She took it from me. So I had to figure something else out. So I work in another room, and I literally had some doors put in so that I could try to keep that space as private as possible. Now, I'm not saying all employees can do that, but it's something you need to talk about. Like working out of your bedroom can be mentally draining, for example. When people do that, sometimes they feel like they're never really getting out of bed and starting their day. But you've got to have that private space discussion with your employees at some point and talk about how you can get there to kind of make it more possible to do more things. And our example as a background screening provider, like if our customers want to do credit checks, someone has to go in, if they're working at homes, or at the office for that matter, someone has to go into those environments and inspect the environment. Because you cannot do a credit check of anybody in an open space. It has to be closed off. And the person that inspects it needs to certify that it's appropriate. That's very much the same with work at home in general. You kind of want to have those things in place, especially if you're working in a regulated organization. So I think that somewhat answers the question.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Annie? You think about, regulated, people are worried about the hybrid environment. Anything to add?
Yeah, I think Ian had a much better answer than I could provide on the compliance side and making sure that the work from home setup is compliant. What I would say though is that what COVID has done is it's shown us that there are other solutions and other ways of doing things and other ways of doing work. We need to come up with some creative solutions to make it work for our business or our industry. But there's always a solution. And if your company or your industry is inflexible, your company is going to lose out on great talent because I mean, as you're seeing with my previous company was in the office space business. So we had a point of view that we wanted to practice what we preach and have our employees in the office. If we're trying to sell office as something that other companies should care about, who are we to have all of our salespeople working out of their bedrooms? And because of that, it was really hard to recruit, and we started losing. We talked about the Great Resignation. We started losing employees because they looked to the company next door and said, well, I can work from home 4 days a week or 5 days a week if I want to at that company. So I think we have to take a good hard look at how we're thinking about our approach to work from home and what level of flexibility we're willing to take on. And I don't know if whoever asked this question, I don't know if you're in a position to influence the leadership's approach to work from home. But there are consequences to not being flexible in today's environment, and you'll feel that in the talent that you're retaining.
Yeah, good comments.
Yeah, I'd add one more thing is make sure your network is secure. That's critical. I don't know if all companies have done that, but VPNs are definitely something that you want to make sure that you have in place and that they work well. There are other options from a connectivity point of view to secure a network, but you've got to make sure you've got that locked down.
Yeah, good feedback, good input. And Daniela, your question is a really good question. Previous to Verified First, I spent 10 years in fintech, and I was remote, and I really can appreciate the idea of how do I be in financial technology, banking, and mortgage lending, and that kind of thing, and still work remote. And we had very strict VPN. I couldn't access anything at all without the VPN. So network's huge. It's kind of a pain, but it worked, right? And it kept the company secure. And then they did inspect my home. They came to our home and they sent a member of the team to make sure that my home had a private space. So all those things are things that I've experienced by working remote.
So if you can't do that, another way to handle that is have the employee take pictures of their space and send them to you. That can work as well.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So we've got about 10 minutes left here and still a few questions coming in. So this great chat, reminding everyone, please drop any questions you might have. You still have a few minutes left. We talked about, Tony has a question here about the inflexibility of being nimble, people coming in with pets or children showing up. I personally, depending on the call, I love that, right? Right now, you're not going to see my baby and you're not going to see my dog or a parrot, but there are moments for that, right? And I think we talked a little bit about that, Tony. So good question. And she says, with COVID, one thing we've learned is you've got to be flexible. I think that's kind of the core message of today is let's think about flexibility. Looking into 2022, that crystal ball here, Courtney, I'll start with you. Is anything more important or less important than it used to be, and why?
Definitely. This is a great question. I think some of the stuff that comes to mind for me first, and I'm a little bit joking, but is the cool office perks like kombucha on tap that people used to be looking for. But I think the question there is, what can you offer? For example, maybe you have some people that are coming into an office and some people that are going to be working remotely, or maybe, as Annie said, I think the bulk of companies are going to be moving toward probably some sort of hybrid setup, whether that means some people are in the office, some aren't, or some people are coming into the office only 2 days a week. What are the perks that you can offer similar to the stuff that people used to look for in an office space that are comparable at home? So if you used to offer fitness fitness classes or something like that? Is there something you can offer that's comparable, like a wellness stipend? But some of the really big ones that come to mind for me that I think are more important are mental health and just like really prioritizing that and thinking about how does, you know, the job that your employees are doing, especially if they are doing it from home or if they're doing a mix, how does that impact their personal life, and really bringing that kind of to the table and being open about those conversations. I think in my own experience recruiting people at Donut, that's been a huge thing that people have been really excited about when we talk about things like that. So people are looking for a company that cares about them holistically. So wellness is, you know, more than just a gym pass or discount. But the other thing that comes to mind for me is clearly defined investment in your employees. And by that, I mean, what is their growth path? What is their development path? People want to know that in the interview process when they aren't even that far along yet. They want to know, you know, how is this job going to help me long term in my career? How is this company going to prepare me for more than just what I'm doing right now? And so I think some of the things that have become more important are those probably all tie together. I could probably really just bucket it all by saying caring about the employees as a whole person, because you're looking beyond just the work they're doing. You're looking into, you know, where do they want to go in their career and how can I give them projects that will help them get there now, but keep them invested and engaged at work because they feel like they're developing and they feel a sense of loyalty because we're giving that loyalty to them.
Yeah, it's really good. Any thoughts or comments, Ian?
Yeah, I think kind of related to mental health is in a way managing change. I think we've gone from an environment where change is constant to now change is constant and happening super fast. And I think it's going to be that way for a while because companies are still figuring all this stuff out. And I think rapid change can cause things like depression and uncertainty and worry, and companies have to address that. And I think they've got to address it head on. You know, really encourage your employees to get counseling, to go talk to somebody, to manage their mental health in a more proactive way. Like don't let it get to the point where you're just completely in the basement and now you're really struggling to get out of it. So I think companies being attuned to that is critical going forward. And you know, the sense of isolation with work at home can just exacerbate that as well.
Yeah. Well, very good. I want to, you know, obviously we've talked about a lot of ideas here, and you know, at the center of all of these ideas, there's technology to help everyone out. And at Verified First, every year we publish what we call a talent acquisition buyer's guide. And so we have a standing poll. I want to make sure we take just a moment and kind of get some audience feedback here. And just thinking really quick, I'm going to launch a poll question here on your screen. Take a moment for everyone to participate, and then we're going to wrap up with talking about how technology comes together to help us solve or deliver on some of these things we've talked about. So take a moment. The poll will be open here for a few seconds. What areas of technology are you looking to replace or add within the next 6 months? So we're looking forward to about July of next year. And just take a moment, select one or more. Are you looking ATS, HRIS, background screening, workforce engagement, or maybe you're more making no places. This has been a year-long survey. We've asked our audience. Every webinar we've done at Verified First, and I'm interested, we'll share the results here in a moment. Give it just a few more seconds. We got about half of you voted. Any thoughts of what the top one is? It's different every webinar. It's never exactly the same. You want to take a guess, Annie, of what's at the top of the list? Did I lose Annie? Courtney, you there?
I can take a shot if you want.
There you go. What's number one?
I think maybe workforce engagement.
Okay.
Yeah, I said those words into my muted audio. Yes, I answer.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll stop and see where you guys are at, and just a couple more seconds. Go vote. Last chance. 1, 2, 3. We'll close it and share some results. You'll see these come up on your screen here in just a second.
Hey.
There you go. Good guess, Ian.
Right.
Now, number one technically is no replacements. So half of our audience isn't looking to change any technology. But I think it's really interesting as we wrap up to think about, all the experience and everything we've talked about with, Annie from an HRIS perspective, Courtney from an employee engagement perspective at Donut, and Ian from a background screening. Our whole thing is all this is technology involved to help you deliver. So, as we wrap up the last few minutes here, maybe we'll start with Annie, and maybe any last comments or things we really want to get off your chest that we hadn't had a chance to talk about yet. We didn't get to all the questions.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, and this is sort of a nice cue from the deck that you have posted right now, but the point about onboarding and how important it is to onboard well, particularly in a remote environment, is increasingly significant. And I think I'm feeling it in being at a new company that is global and remote and hybrid. We're needing to really leverage technology and just be a lot more strategic about how we approach onboarding and ongoing training so that employees are prepared to do the job that they're hired to do, and long term that they're engaged and continuing to learn.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Courtney?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Annie said, and then I would also add over communicating, being more intentional than you think you need to be, not just about planning onboarding, but about the entire employee experience. I think if there's one thing that I've learned working remotely, it's that you say something one way quickly and you think you've communicated it, and then you realize that there were miscommunications and things got messed up along the way and the message got muddled. So I would apply that to pretty much every aspect of your employee experience process and think about how can we anticipate where those miscommunications or trip ups will happen, and how can we be extra intentional about communicating things. So when I think about things like onboarding, I think about not just how do we give people the tools and the knowledge that they need to do their job, but also teaching them about how it fits into the company so that they start to feel, bought into why does my role matter? And then beyond that, introducing them to buddies and people in their network that can kind of be those lifelines, because if I'm training someone when I'm not in a training session, are they just sitting, are they just working and they're kind of lonely? And like, I want to make sure that they have, of course they're getting their work done, but I also want to make sure that they have people on the team that they feel like they can just connect with once in a while, so that they can break up the work day and they're not just sitting at their computer screen.
Yeah. And Ian, I want to wrap up maybe with the last question from our audience. Again, this one's from Todd, so I'm kind of throwing you a curveball. And there's a reason for the curveball here, Todd. This is a really good question. Verified First, we used to be 100% in office, other than a few sales reps remotely, right? I just met with our CFO with one of our partners yesterday, and there's conversations about now leasing our space. And Todd's question is talking about, conversation around remote work. How's it affected trust? And we're an organization, I'm using us as an example because we went from full on site, everyone, managers are there, to full remote like that. How do you think that's affected trust? And maybe Courtney and Annie, you can wrap up with some final comments there.
Trust from our employees?
I think trust both ways, right? From employees and trust from leadership, right?
I think it's been healthy. I mean, we went into this like a lot of companies did, where we thought, oh, maybe this will last a week, and then maybe it'll be a month, and then here I am, I don't know, 2 years in, and I'm still at home. So I think like over time it dawned on us, that this is going to keep happening. I think it's a healthy thing in that really, if you're remote and you're all remote, you have to trust each other more. It's not even an option; it's a requirement. You got to do it. You've got to just engage with each other in a different way from a very high trust position, and believe in one another. So if that's not happening, yeah, especially with remote work, you've got a problem, and you need to address it quickly. But that means managers and leaders need to let their people lead. Like, they need to have autonomy to make decisions and feel comfortable with that. And the employees need to want that, right? Not everybody wants it, but you know, in these conditions, you've got to take that on. And I think ultimately that's the best way to lead, no matter what. You know, I just think that's the bottom line. You're going to get so much more out of your employees if you trust them to make decisions and do the things that they think they need to do to succeed. All we need to do is give them the right tools.
Yeah, it's really good. Any final comments, Courtney or Annie, adding to that?
Just to add to that point, clear expectations. If you don't have a way to measure performance and success, no one will know whether they're doing their job well or right, or spending their time on the right thing. So
or you're losing, right?
Right. So trust is key, but also there needs to be alignment in terms of what is expected. And if you can be aligned on those 2 points, then your employees will most likely be successful.
Cool. Well, I know we're up on our time, and I just want to thank Courtney and Annie, and thanks for coming together for today's chat. Your contact information is on the screen. Hopefully, if your email blows up, let us know. But again, we really appreciate the chat here, and I'm grateful for everyone who attended today's webinar. Just stick around just for one more second. I'll turn this back over to what we call Voice in the Wind, and talking about how you can get SHRM credit for today's webinar. Again, Annie and Courtney and Ian, thank you, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for listening in.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, that about wraps it up for today's discussion. I want to thank everyone for your attendance today, as it is always important to learn about new and innovative HR priorities. I'd also like to give a big thank you to our host, Ben, and speakers Ian, Courtney, and Annie for having this great and relevant discussion. We'll be sending out this webinar on demand in case you want to use this for reference or send it to a colleague. For our live attendees today, stick around just a little bit longer for our post-webinar survey to redeem 1 SHRM credit. For any on-demand listeners, check your email for instructions on how to redeem your credit. Next, in our HR at the Table series, we'll be hosting EPS Corporation's Senior HR and Corporate Recruiter on keeping up with candidate demands. We hope you can make it, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.